friends, I'm the Dungeon Tutor. Welcome. I'm back on YouTube. Yes, it's been a little bit, but we're here. And in time for the 10-year anniversary that I've been doing YouTube. Since, honestly, RPGaDay 2016, I've been putting in my time doing it in August all throughout. So this year is no different, although we're going to do it a little differently. We're going to be doing 10-day blocks. The first 10 days today. In some days' time, we'll be doing 11 to 20 and then 21 through 31. So we will be giving you all the content, just kind of a little bit more diluted, so you don't have to go through video after video after video. Not that I don't love to do all of those videos, but there's other videos that I want to do now. So we're going to be doing it this way. Now, it also means that as we do these, it's going to be a little compressed, but I think the topics will be poignant, and we will be able to get into all the things that make each of the topics an interesting one for consideration for RPGaDay. But what is RPGaDay? Well, quite simply, it is something that has been concentrated to focus on August, the month of Gen Con, and to try to spread positivity throughout the gaming sphere from those of us who don't go to Gen Con, and even for those who do. We have a topic every day throughout August, and we try to come up with a video, a work of art, something, a poem perhaps, that is guided by these topics, or maybe not. Whatever you want to do that will help you to express a love for role-playing games, something that you have as your perspective for role-playing games, etc., etc. So I'm going to go topic by topic. I've got 10 of them to do. 10, yes. And we're going to cover them now. The first topic is discipline. And, yeah, I've got a writing crop. Kind of discipline might come to mind, but honestly, my thought on discipline is in terms of all the participants of a role-playing game. Discipline in this particular regard means to me the commitment, the stick-to-itiveness to set aside a given time for role-playing games when you commit to be in a group. If you can't do that, if your players can't rely on you, the other players can't rely on you as a player, the group can't rely on you as a game master, you're starting out on pretty shaky legs. And it's really not fair to everybody else, including those people who do commit. So, in that aspect, discipline is extremely important. Role-playing games don't work if there isn't some level of discipline. And it's different than almost any other hobby. If you miss a poker night, the game will go on without you. If you miss a movie night, they'll still watch the movie without you. In a role-playing game, your character that's been with the group suddenly no longer there because you're not. Now, you may have your own rules, you may have one other person stepping up to control your character, but in my game, that player just gives up their position in the group. The player walks off, goes on a religious retreat, hiccups and slips into the ethereal realm, whatever. The rest of the group does not have to suffer their players not being there. But it's something I hope my players don't do very often. And in truth, I'm blessed with groups that have high amounts of discipline in terms of attendance. So that's my answer for that topic. It's extremely important, and I think you'll find that a person who has great discipline may be forgiven some other minor discretions as long as they're reliable. It's a huge benefit. Second one, stature. Now, this one, in my mind, is going to reflect on the general relative position of the different role-playing games and the companies that publish them. Obviously, the elephant in the room is Wizards of the Coast, owned by Hasbro, and their Dungeons & Dragons projects. Now, they are making other projects besides Dungeons & Dragons, but Dungeons & Dragons and Magic the Gathering are the tentpoles of Wizards. And as Dungeons & Dragons is the most successful role-playing game at the moment, what they call the greatest role-playing game, that may be debatable, but in terms of sales, in terms of number of people playing at a given time, no. They have it by a fairly wide margin right now. So, what about stature? Well, they have the top stature. But there's a lot of other companies out there. And there's a lot of companies that are popping up out of the woodwork. We are in a golden age of role playing games where anybody with a dream might be able to put out a Kickstarter and possibly get people interested that'll pay for art, that will pay for binding and getting a physical product in their hands. Or they may decide, you know what? Stock art isn't very expensive. Buy it and you get the license to be able to use it in your game. Write out your role playing game, stitch it together, self publish. People do it all the time. So there's a huge amount of games that are out there. But I'll shout out a few. In the mid ranked tier, which is pretty much most underneath Wizards of the Coast is going to be, you have such companies as Free League, making the One Ring for the Lord of the Rings. They're making Mutant Deer Zero. They have Coriolis. They have Aliens, which is excellent. So, among plenty of others, Forbidden Lands, and yeah, there's a lot. Blade Runner, if you like that IP, it's excellent. They're out there. Chaosium, the venerable giant, is still around, and they're still making great games. They've got the Age of Viking now, and they have their old franchises like Call of Cthulhu. They're still supporting. Pendragon is still out there and excellent. RuneQuest has been given a new starter set recently and looks really good. They're still certainly worth looking into if you have never really crossed them before. Catalyst Games has been gathering a number of intellectual properties. Currently, they're creating Shadowrun in its 6th edition. So, working with Topps, who actually owns the Shadowrun franchise, they're publishing out a bunch of really good books. And if you've ever had any kind of hesitation about looking into Shadowrun because it has a reputation for being hard or horrible, I assure you it's pretty solid today. Steve Jackson Games, still making GURPS and Ogre and Car Wars and all kinds of good stuff. Also some smaller things that they've published like Girl Genius. But yes, these are all companies that you shouldn't hesitate to look to. But then there are the indie press groups that are making good role-playing content. Sometimes it is in support of other companies, like, my company that's published me, GUI Cube. They are making games for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons that are far more immersive than anything Wizards of the Coast has ever made. And excellent materials with a lot of value behind them. So, my urging to you is, while it's easy to get lost in the stature of the industry leader, and even more so once you get down below those spreading branches to see the companies that are under them, then look even further down at the ground level and take a look at those small companies that are still kicking and trying to get their names out there, trying to get their dream in front of people so that they can see them. Little companies like Moongate Exploration Company that put out games like Mad and Witch and Dodge. Small little games, but things that some people really might find inspire their imagination and could become their next favorite game. Stature isn't everything. It only means that you got there first or that you went viral, which isn't always deserved. And while I'm not saying Dungeons & Dragons is a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, it is not the end-all be-all. So, look past the stature of the industry leader. Take a chance at something perhaps not as well known that might still be amazing. Number 3 is poise. Now, poise, of course, is grace under pressure. And I want to tell you a very short story about in 2023. Wizards of the Coast, yeah, them again, they decided that they wanted more money. So what they were going to do is they were going to change the rule that allowed people to use the core mechanics of Dungeons & Dragons to make their own games without giving Wizards of the Coast anything. It was going to expand the brand they already had, which was going to help their sales. So, in general, these other companies have helped push Wizards of the Coast up even further. But they wanted all the money. So they were going to change their open gaming license so that companies that were making money off of Wizards of the Coast would have to give Wizards of the Coast some money. Now, a lot of companies and a lot of creators looked at that with horror and dread, but many were ready to capitulate because what choice would they have? They'd have to deal with Hasbro-level lawyers and most small companies can't afford the legal teams to take on such a foe. A couple of companies, though, did, to me, demonstrate a particular level of poise. Kobold Press, small company that had been making 5th edition stuff, and before that, I think since about 2012, they had been making different content and supplement of other games. They pulled together a kind of a crusade to make a system-free, open use for everybody role-playing game that everybody could rally around. And that game turned out to be Tales of the Valiant. Now, with Wizards of the Coast, if they had actually gone through and changed the open gaming license and made everybody putting out further content pay them against their profits, Tales of the Valiant might really be an industry leader to this day. Fortunately, Wizards did buckle. They eventually put everything out that's in the system rules document for Dungeons and Dragons and put it into Creative Commons. At least for the 2014 version of Dungeons and Dragons, the new stuff isn't there. But it's a pretty big deal that they tried and they fought and they were ready to come up with an option that would stand counter to Wizards of the Coast. The other one I want to talk about is Troll Lord Games. Now, Troll Lord, of course, is a competitor of Wizards of the Coast. They make Castles and Crusades, which, sales-wise, is a drop in the bucket compared to Dungeons and Dragons, honestly. That's just true. But they went before everybody and put out a general message saying, hey, Wizards, you have lawyers? You think that this is enforceable? Bring it. We'll get lawyers. We'll take you on because we think you're wrong. We think you can't touch the stuff we've already made. And we're going to take our Castles and Crusades, and we're going to change all the things we feel we need to so that it's no longer required to use your open gaming license. It's going to be our own stuff. It'll be similar enough that it'll stand up in copyright laws being legally distinct. But we've got our fans, and we don't need you. So if you want to force this issue, that's fine. We just won't support your product anymore. Eventually, Wizards caved. Troll Lord was not tested in that way. Kobold Press was not tested significantly enough. And they're both still around, both still making great products. But they showed extreme poise in the face of what could have been financial ruin. So I want to acknowledge those companies right here and now. The next one is Charm. Now, certainly, charm is a great thing to have. Having people be able to like you is a good thing. But in terms of the spell charm person, the ultimate thorny issue for many, many, many game masters, and many, many players, to be honest, it in some cases was one of the most terrifying spells that you could find your character subjected to, because it required a certain amount of role play against your character's nature. If you were going to role play being charmed, you actually had to consider for your character how to take the person who charmed you, their best interests into heart of what you do. Does that involve attacking one of your allies who's attacking them? Not necessarily. It doesn't scrub away all of your past, affiliations and everything. But it does confuse you to the point that protecting them is your now top priority. And if that is most expedient by casting spells against your allies, well, does it work or doesn't it? Game masters have fought that one out and tried to make players do aggressive acts against their fellow players, making them attack or cast powerful spells against them. I've never really played with anything too horrific, although it does definitely risk. If you were going to play as if you were not charmed, that's bad role-playing, and generally I will talk about that. But ultimately what that represents is a loss of character and player agency. And that's a hot button topic today. Your agency over your character is a hard thing for someone to shake. Oh, no, it can be actually really easy to do it. If you're the game master and you cast a spell and now you could tell that player, no, you don't do that. Your character is charmed. You can't do that. Your agency seems to vanish, especially if it's incredibly critical. If you're looking down the big bad evil guy, for example, and he starts charming you, can be in for a very bad time. But there's an important but there. Game masters have to balance the importance of having a threat to hang over the players' heads of something like a charm spell, as opposed to never testing them, never letting them have to worry about something like that, especially when the players use that spell themselves frequently and often. And it doesn't always have to be a spell, by the way. A charm person can come in a variety of flavors, all the way up to domination. No, not that. But it is certainly a thing to think about when you're a game master, how much you're going to value the player's agency for the sake of the challenge that you want to put before the players. And I generally urge on the side of caution and to use a light touch when it comes to charm. But as a game master, you must do what your heart tells you is right to do. You must still consider the challenge for the players, and if that is a credible challenge that your players may face, it's up to you to be judicious in how you employ it. But still, consider player agency as a good, and taking it away as something that is going to push the boundaries of what your players are going to be comfortable with. The fifth topic is burden. And I want to tell you something. This is about permission. Strange? Yes. Encumbrance as a topic in role-playing games has often been something that's been debated by various players, game masters alike. And that is, how important is encumbrance? In early role-playing games, it was extremely important. As a matter of fact, the very first treasure in Dungeons & Dragons, as the story comes out, was given by Gary Gygax to his young son, Ernie. And at the time, the treasure that he gave him was 4,000 copper pieces. Now, for a beginning first level adventure, 4,000 copper pieces is not pocket change. Oh, okay, it's literally a lot of pocket change. But it still has a value that could have been very useful for young Ernie buying perhaps a few items that he still needed to equip his character out with. Or maybe hiring another henchman. But he couldn't carry it. There was too much weight in coin for him to bag everything up and go on with it. And I never exactly heard how he handled it. The triage of maybe leaving it behind as being something we'll get if we come back this way. Maybe, perhaps. Such a condition certainly is one of the reasons why the spell Tensor's Floating Disc was created, so that encumbrance wouldn't be as much of a chore for somebody. Or the reason somebody might try to bring a pack mule into a dungeon, so that they can carry all the treasure. But, give you a little hint here. It doesn't matter if you don't care. Modern games are more narrative. The challenge is not in trying to logistically figure out how to carry all of your treasure, how to carry all of your gear, how much food to bring with you, because it's always fun to have your characters starving in a dungeon, how much water to bring with you, because, again, dying of thirst is always fun. No, for a lot of groups, it's assumed the characters know what they're doing, that they pack enough water, they pack enough food, and that you just simply don't have to worry about it. And I'll tell you this, I give you permission to do that. If you don't want to run dungeons and ledgers, you don't want to deal with those kind of details, don't. It's your table. Nobody's going to care. As a matter of fact, your players may very much welcome not needing to do that if they've come from another group that did. But, just to think about it, there's a reason why people still use those rules. And that reason is quite simple. It's an extra challenge. It's something that works in with a certain style of play. That raw, survival-oriented game style of old-school role-playing games. That everything is a challenge to your character, and overcoming that is the ultimate sign of victory over your circumstances. If you can manage to carry all the gear you're going to bring with you, carry enough equipment, have the right kind of spells, and get into a dungeon and out again and successful, the reward is yours, but so is the glory. Your esteem goes up when you perfectly planned out a dungeon. You brought enough things, you survived the challenge, and you've come out ahead. Maybe you gained a level. Maybe you gained more loot and grown in power. That's your reward. That's your treasure. And if you did it despite the fact that you had to follow encumbrance rules and keep track of what you were going to carry out and only chose the best, most valuable stuff, there you go. It wasn't spoon-fed to you. You earned it. And that can be a great reward as well. So if you've never played that style before, think about it. Don't have to punish yourself if you don't want to. There's nothing wrong with it. But just think about it. It might be something down the road that you might try to do. The sixth topic for RPGaDay is reach. Now, reach in a role-playing game often talks about how far your weapon can hit your opponent. And that's mostly in melee. Range is usually what you measure missile weapons with, or, fired weapons. But reach is the quality that a long weapon has to hit your opponent before they can hit you. In essence, being able to possibly keep your opponents at bay and hurt them as they try to come in to hurt you. And certainly, tactically, reach is a great thing to have. But in this particular case, I also want to talk to you about the reach of other things. Now, in terms of role-playing games, your reach of your enemies is usually, attacking you. But when you're a player, and you're playing a role-playing game in a realized world, not just a flimsy two-dimensional cardboard world where you just have a dungeon and a license to go and use violence. If you have somebody who's caused you difficulty, umbrage of some sort, just remember all of the different things that your character might have in a real world. For example, if you are trying to get service and the game master, for whatever reason, is making it difficult, say he decides that the owner does not like you and he is going to give you a hard time, maybe not sell you what you're looking for, despite the fact that it's obvious they have it. There are situations like that that can really grind your gears and make you feel like you can't do anything. I can't attack this person because if I do, then I'm just a murderer. And I'm going to go to jail. I may end up hanging if I attack and kill this person. So what do I do? How do I get back at them? Well, these days, what would you do? You leave a bad Yelp review. If you have the right type of personality or the right person in your group to help you with it, the court of public opinion is a pretty brutal place to be tried in. If it's a weapon seller, for example, and they won't sell you a particular weapon you're looking for because they don't like you, they don't like your species, or they think that you look poor when you have the money, but they're like, oh, where'd you steal it from, or something like that. I've seen this before in games. It's relatively easy to start rumors. It's relatively easy to threaten a person with a bad reputation. And if this particular establishment doesn't have a crystal clear reputation spanning back decades, that can be a real solid threat to hold against somebody. In a case in a game that I'm actually playing in Shadowrun, we were playing in a run, and we were dealing with a Mr. Johnson. That is a person who gives you a Shadowrun, and faceless, anonymous person from a corporation that serves their interests. The corporation is never mentioned. It's just a solid financial transaction for you to go off and have a Shadowrun, which usually means some sort of illegal act. Well, a good threat to use against a Mr. Johnson, because these things often seem like they're only one way. But if you just use a little bit of your character's own force of personality in the engagement and let them know, yeah, if you don't give us more money, what we're doing is you're criminally underpaying us. Or maybe don't think you appreciate exactly what you're asking us to do and how much risk there is involved and how much our expertise is required. It may just come out to the wrong people that you are doing some pretty shady stuff. And for example, if you're worried about a mega corporation, worried about them just greasing you without you being able to do anything, the kind of a fragile shield that you might have with a subtle threat may exceed the range of your guns. If you, as I have prepared to do, told Rich Johnson, just so you know, we made a file of everything that we've seen, everything you've told us, and it isn't going to take very long for our friends to find out who exactly you work for. And everything that we've done is going to get hung on your doorstep. So if you really want that nuclear option, test us and find out. You guys aren't immune to the court of public opinion or even the courts of, the other mega corporations. So yeah, you may think that we're just some dumb shadowrunners that you can just make disappear. You don't want to try that too often. It might end up very badly for you. And, good threat is always good to have hanging over when you're doing illegal crimes anyhow. So, a thought about using your reach and the reach of your character and the resources that you have. Advice a lot of people don't stop to think about. So, keep that in your pocket. It can really do wonders for you. Next is mercy. Mercy is a fine thing, especially when your enemies employ it. And that should bring you to a mindset that a lot of players who believe in ending fights permanently fail to pick up on. If you kill all of your enemies, all of them, you quickly will have a reputation for being bloodthirsty. There's no second guessing it. If you never leave a survivor, yeah, that word is going to spread around. Nobody ever walks away from a fight with this group. And here's the reason why that's bad. In a real world, reputations spread. If you are a member, say, of a modern mercenary company, there are some of those around, private military corporation companies and stuff like that, and just so happens in theaters where you're engaged, there is a distinct lack of survivors. There have been groups that have done this. Then you will have a reputation. And if you are stopped, yourselves arrested, you may be tried in international court for war crimes. It has happened before. So if your character is always, even if it's zealously, trusting that they're on the side of good and they're doing the right thing, trademark, there are plenty of reasons to not kill everybody. Number one, you can't bring people to justice if they're dead. And yeah, that may be more complicated. That may be a hassle to have to deal with prisoners and things. But if you actually have a reputation for being merciful to some of your opponents, maybe not, if you're fighting to survive against being attacked, self-defense, that may be one thing. But going out, attacking somebody, and killing them over and over and over again for all the foes that you fight, don't expect mercy back. Some people are okay with that. I understand it. But it's not a very realistic thing for a game master to still have the world react to players as if that mercy should be reciprocated. So if your characters are, again, finding themselves on the losing end of a battle and any of them are captured, why would they ever be left to live? And you don't want your characters to die, generally. A few games that's okay on, but generally you don't want your characters to get killed. So a little bit of mercy here and there, especially since it usually will cost you very little, might really be a useful thing in your world to have positive credit towards mercy, because that might someday be reciprocated back to you. And also, let's face it, do you really want to play sociopaths that's their solution to everything is just to exterminate the enemy where you find them? Think about it. Don't think about it too hard. I don't want to ruin your fun. But that brings your character to being a little bit more believable as a real person rather than just a slaughtering monster. Just a thought. Just a thought. Number 8 is resolve. Now, resolve, again, is a great thing. Having a storehouse of your personal willpower that's driving you forward is great. But in my case, when I think of resolve, I think of a game system that has a set mechanic for deciding if something works or not. And all the games have them. Even if it's paper, rock, scissors for Theater of the Mind from White Wolf's live-action role-playing games, they still have a means of resolving conflict, of resolving what happens if the outcome is in doubt. And there are a lot of them. The D20 system from the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons, or the 5th edition system, which is patterned most strongly after the D20 system, certainly is a very familiar one. You roll a 20-sided die, add everything up, or subtract whatever applies to that roll, and see what your target number is and how close you are to meeting or exceeding it, because then you succeed. If you don't meet or succeed it, you fail. Fairly straightforward, very easy to understand. White Wolf, it's a dice pool system. You take up a number of 10-sided dice, usually equal to your trait plus your skill, and roll it. Sometimes it's against a raw ability, like, say, your Gnosis if you're a werewolf, but their system is, again, breathtakingly simple. And depending on the addition, what you're shooting for will determine, after you look at the results, how successful, or if you didn't succeed, your roll will be. The nice thing about that way of resolving a situation is they show you intensity. The number of successes that you make a roll by determines how well you succeed. So a single success is, okay, you did it. Wasn't great, but you did it. To having 5 or more successes, oh my gosh, you did a brilliant job. The best you possibly could have done, maybe. All elements of a good system's resolution. So when you're thinking about different games and you're thinking about, oh, this one might taste pretty good, it's got some system mechanics I really like, resolution systems are important because how those work determines how your world is going to feel. D&D feels pretty comfortable for a lot of people, not least of all because their system makes sense to most people's sensibilities. If you have a high attribute, you get a straight bonus to your roll, meaning you're more likely to succeed. If you have, you're doing something very difficult, then expecting that difficulty number to be high makes sense, and you're going to need a really good roll to succeed at it. All of this makes that world feel a particular way. The World of Darkness game feels a little bit different because the resolution system is itself a little bit different. They're all games, they're all great, but they all are flavored by their systems and how they resolve situations. Stick with me as we keep making videos, and we'll show you all those systems. We'll show you the strengths and weaknesses of the different game systems, and that may lead you to your next favorite game. The next topic, number 9, is privilege. And I will say this. When you're thinking about your world and making it real, how it lives and it breathes with your players, consider privilege. Now, that word gets thrown around a lot. Usually it has to deal with discontent with how uneven the different advantages of our modern society are meted out onto certain people based on a lot of factors. Where you come from, how you talk, what you look like, what race you are. Those are all things that are oftentimes anchored into privilege. Much the same way, if you want your world to make sense to your players, the idea of privilege may be something you want to consider in ways that often aren't. For example, in the Dungeons & Dragons world, and I mean world as in the sphere of adventuring in Dungeons & Dragons, being an adventurer is kind of a strange privilege. There aren't a lot of equivalent experiences in modern Earth. Perhaps mercenaries back in the day might have. Wandering, say, you're looking at wandering cavaliers, or the various disconnected ronin, for example, from Japanese traditions, might have enjoyed a certain status in society. Sure. But in general, the idea of an adventurers guild that is a semi-military faction that is not under direct control of the royalty, how does that even work? If you have a body of heroes in an adventurers guild that have the magical power and the arms and armaments and magical gear to take out a nation's army, that's a heck of a privilege to afford to them. So if you're making a real world, and you decide, I'm going to throw an Adventurers Guild in there, that makes sense. Think about how that privilege exists, how it might have gotten there, and what all is included in the package of that privilege. Are you under the beck and call of royalty to save the day if they need you? Will they do that before they risk their own army? Certainly a thought. And that helps to make the world a little bit more real. Now, sometimes you don't care about that reality, right? You might think, this is going to work just like one of those animes where you just have a guild and you do things constantly, going off against monsters and dungeons, and that's just the way it is. Sure, that works. Not everything has to be incredibly deep. But if you have, for example, a restaurant that just does not serve orcs and goblins, we can appreciate that. We can understand that because of experiences in the world today extrapolated through a world that is full of monsters and possibly has extremely dangerous populations of maybe orcs, maybe goblins. And all of a sudden that prejudice projects out for a loss of any possibility of that privilege of being able to eat at a given place, to be able to go to certain places. Something to think about. You don't have to dwell very difficult themes into your game. You don't have to populate modern day things in your fantasy world. Absolutely don't have to. But it would be very understandable if you did. And it could be very, I don't know, something that might make your players think that maybe a diverse group, different people being able to play on other sides of the aisles from other people, might make for an interesting, challenging blend. Having a group that's all dwarves, for example, maybe a lot of fun. You could have a lot of entertaining stories with a group like that. See The Hobbit, for example. But you're going to have places, for example, that maybe dwarves aren't really strong at. Maybe you'll go to an elven land and the elves have a grudge against the dwarves for some reason. You don't know. So that's something to think about. Don't have to make that rule your game decisions, but it is a consideration that'll make your world feel real if you do have things like that. And from time to time, you'll have people who will have suffered at the hands of a particular group and then will carry that prejudice onward. You will have whole societies that will have felt a threat that has been held over them, and they will react in a certain way, which will make sense in your world and make your world make a little bit more sense. So, and the final one, 10th topic, is secret. Now, as long as role-playing games have gone on, people have had reasons to have secrets. Game masters have wanted to have a secret message go out to a player that the others don't know about. And that is important because sometimes you want everything to be a surprise. If that player's character starts acting a little differently, the other players don't need to know how that happened, why it's happening. And that can really lead to fun moments, including adding paranoia or surprises to what they otherwise expect, which is great. Now, passing notes is certainly one way of doing it. Sometimes that takes extra time for writing out the note and sending it off. That's why pre-writing notes for things like that can be really useful, something to think about. That helps to make your game go faster if you just say, okay, we're going to play this, you're going to do this here, that's for you, go ahead and read that. Don't let anybody else see it, thank you, just keep going. Will that draw everybody's attention? Yeah. Will that create a lot of metagaming? Probably. The players will probably go, I bet something's going on there. But you wanted to emphasize the other players don't know about this. The other characters do not know that that player just got something passed to them. So good role play would involve ignoring that. But my favorite one, and I think a lot of game masters love this, pulling a player off to the side to talk to them. Great moment. It really can be fun to go and have a little role-playing situation with another player for something that only they have anything to do with. If it happens in their mind, or their character is no longer with the group for one reason or another and has something happen to them that the others should not know about, glorious. And I'll admit, I sometimes pull a player back, and I'll just say, "Hey, how's your day going?" "Oh, no, I'm not. I'm not doing anything sneaky to you." But they don't know that, so I just want them to be on their toes. "How you doing?" "I had a good day today. How was your day?" It can be fun. Don't linger on that too much. You've got valuable game time that everybody is there for, but honestly, can be a lot of fun. But the best use I've ever seen, really, for something like that was when the players all were, going in a horror themed game, and the game master called somebody over to his side and came back, and everything seemed perfectly fine. They were still role playing their character. Everything was going swell. The players forgot about what they were doing, and then they found that character again, the real one, and that's when the attack hit him from behind, because that player knew that he was no longer his character, but was told to act like his character. So he stayed right with them. He, did all the things that they came to trust and rely on. So that when the betrayal came and his character came back, exhausted from having broken free from where he was hidden away, that's when the monster decided to attack. And it was much more effective because the players did not expect it. They'd come to think otherwise, and they were diverted from their expectations and their suspicions. And that worked out really well. So, those are the 10 topics for the first 10 of RPGaDay. I'm going to do the next 10 soon. So stay tuned for that. I look forward to seeing you again. And when I do, I hope that between that happy time and now, that you, yes, you get a chance to roll some dice, play some games, have some fun, but stay safe out there, friends. Until that next time, farewell.